If you're in business or an entrepreneur, or maybe you're just starting out, here are a couple things you should know how to do by now. And if you don't know how to do them, don't worry, I got you covered in this video. So let's get into it. The first one, I learned this from studying people like Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, Lewis Howes, and so much more. But one of the things you're going to have to do and learn to do, if you haven't learned it already, is become resourceful. Now, when I went to Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins years ago, he talks about being resourceful, and many other people do. But what does that mean? It wasn't until I went to the event I was able to then connect it to my time in the military, because they taught us how to be resourceful, right? You got to work with what you have, meaning you're going to have to do more with less. So how do you do that? Well, if you've seen my channel, you know that I use AI a lot because, well, a lot of tools and things like that aren't actually readily available to those in business who don't have the money or the capital to afford it. Now, with AI, you can take advantage of that because you can turn AI into the people that you can't afford, and then use that to go ahead and at least give you a stepping stone to get to the next point, so that you can go ahead and make more money or increase your resources some which way, shape, or form. Now, another thing you should know how to do is, well, think outside of the box. When you're in business, or if you're starting off or whatever, depending if you're on the innovation side or the marketing side, you're still wearing a lot of hats, right? The innovator and the marketer, as Peter Drucker once said, are the two things that are essentially run a business, right? Because you have the innovation, the product, so on and so forth. Let's say an iPhone or a new Android phone comes out, right? That's the innovation. Well, the marketing is the way we take the pictures. How do we shoot the video? What words are we going to say about the product or service? How are we going to say things about the product or service? What do we want other people, so on and so forth, to say about the product or service, and things like that? And when you take all these things into account, it's a lot. This is why it takes two, in the beginning at least, the innovation and the marketing, to make a thing go right, as they say in the song, right? However, then you have the third step, right? You have to sell it, right? So what do you say when you sell stuff, right? And that's coming from, well, the copy and the sales team that deals with the people in everyday life. So first, you have to learn how to be resourceful. If you don't know how to be resourceful, go outside, try to survive for a week or 2 weeks, so on and so forth. Put $50 or $100 or no money in your pocket, and see what you're able to do. See how you're able to get by within that week to 2 weeks, so on and so forth. I did a test where I tried to do something similar to Undercover Billionaire. The thing that I miscalculated, and I should have just factored it in because I thought it was, well, I should have just went with my own hunch that media lies. But the thing that I was missing that they had in the TV show, Undercover Billionaire, was the fact that they had a freaking camera crew following these people around. I mean, think about it for a second. If I walked into a place with professional tens of thousands of dollars in camera equipment, so on and so forth, with boom mics and everything else, and I told somebody that they are just they're just filming a documentary on me of seeing if I can make it in a new place, so on and so forth. Don't you think that those people might actually, I don't know, look at the cameras and say, I want to be on camera. I run a business. Maybe this might be on TV. Let me act a different way. Because in my experience, when I went without the camera crew, there's a whole different thing that happens psychologically. And I could teach you that in another video. But remember that. See, in that situation, they were resourceful. They were able to go into different places. Yes, they made up a story instead of telling them exactly what the camera crew was there for. However, the camera crew was definitely a benefit, like AI is a benefit to the small businesses and the entrepreneurs coming out now, right? Because you can tell them to become whomever you need them to become, that has information or has put information online, and AI has access to that now. So now we could go ahead and retrieve that information to benefit you. Now, the next step is realizing, yes, does it take two to make a thing go right? Yes, you have your innovation and your marketing. You need a product or service in order to market. You're not going to market nothing. No pun intended to the nothing phone that came out. But you're not going to market nothing, right? You have to market a product or service. And then from there, well, then there's sales. And the only thing that I can see when I look into sales is that they handle a lot of the objections, the reasons why people shouldn't purchase something. Because if they're already in the store, if they're already on the website, that means they're already interested. You got their attention. They know a little bit of the company or the product or service's story. So that's why they showed up there. Now they just got to, baby step or, hold someone's hand to get them to the sale process, because there's some fear, and that's what sales does. It helps people move through that fear aspect because they already got the courage to come up, to the store or whatever and say, I'm interested in this, but should I actually give you my money because I'm scared, I don't want to waste it, etc. So they talk to a salesperson. So in actuality, I guess it does take three sometimes, but you get the drift. Anyways, now, moving forward to the last thing, if you're not able to, what's it called? Not the last thing, sorry, thinking outside of the box and stuff like that, right? But before we get to the last thing, when it comes to thinking outside of the box, right? And I say this quite often. Most people say, oh, well, I want to make more money and things like that. Oh, and by the way, if you get value out of this video, go ahead and smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. But people normally say they want to make more money and things like that. Well, if the only thing you know is taking your money and putting it into the stock market works, or putting it in a 401k works, and you never educated yourself on the other financial things that you can do, such as, well, there's more than just stocks. You can trade options. What's a call? What's a put? What's a covered, what's a covered call? What's a condor? So on and so forth. Things like that. That's when you're trading options on the financial market. How do you use diversification to create an all-weather scenario similar to what Ray Dalio does? Well, that's a combination coming from hedge fund management that, well, they invest in different areas, but it's a more of a complex situation. So I'm going to go ahead and invest in different verticals and industries, so on and so forth. But then I'm going to go ahead and also invest in different types of securities so that I can hedge and mitigate the risk that I'm going to put forth. So maybe some of the money might get allocated to options. Others might get allocated to stocks. Others might get allocated to option contracts with specific parameters in place, like an iron condor or a covered call, which is, I think, how Mark Cuban made all his money with Yahoo, so on and so forth, and things like that. That understanding opens up your horizon when it comes to making money and increasing your investment. Now, that's out of the box thinking, but it's only out of the box thinking because, well, you're living in a box. And in order to expand and grow, if you're into personal development, is to, well, get out of that and get comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, I'm in the corner of a room right now because I just needed a quiet place, but I had no problem popping out my camera so I could go ahead and record this video for you. Last but not least, if you're having difficulties being aware of what it is that is around you and how you can go ahead and speed up this process, I strongly encourage you to watch class, which is a lesson pretty much, or class is essentially an acronym for a class that I am teaching online completely free on YouTube, and it stands for Creativity, Logic, Art, Science, and Spirituality, how it all comes together. It's a way of thinking better, not just different, right? Apple had the great think different movement, so on and so forth. The thing is, people have thought so different, but they forgot to think better, right? So it's not just, yeah, I'm going to think different. I'm going to figure out how to get myself out of this situation. So yeah, it puts money in people's pocket, but let's say you come out with a business or whatever, the business is putting money in your pocket, but what's it doing for other people? And that's where the thinking better comes into place, right? And if you haven't seen lesson 8 or any of the lessons, one of the things that class shows you is all the things that something can be, right? It opens your eyes to all the ways to look at something instead of just seeing things for what it is, right? And so if you look at, let's say, the number 8, for instance, and I mentioned this in class in a couple lessons, if you turn it on its side, it looks like the infinity symbol, so on and so forth. Or it can look like an hourglass, so on and so forth. But if you turn it on its side now, here's the crazy part, and you spin it, It looks like a torus, especially if you lift it up now and it's spinning, or a donut, so on and so forth. And that relates to sacred geometry, which is, well, geometry falls into science, logic, so on and so forth. And then sacred geometry falls into spirituality. And the only way you make that piece of artwork, which is art, is by extending and expressing your creativity. So it does hit all the letters in the acronym. However, it's just something that can open your eyes. So if you did get value out of this video, if you got lost in the sauce somewhere, I know I can ramble, so on and so forth. I want to go ahead and recap. So things that I learned and things that you should learn as an entrepreneur, excuse me, as an entrepreneur when coming up in the world. And the reason why you see me doing all these things and you don't see a lot of takes is because, well, my time performing as a magician, and there's going to be coming some videos soon where I show you some magic tricks and I incorporate that into what it is that I do. But I want to have that one continuous shot so that you know I'm not a gaffe, so on and so forth. I'm coming to you live, etc. So first, you have to be resourceful, right? I learned that from Tony Robbins, as well as experiencing it in the military, as well as life, so on and so forth. I gave an example of how you can develop those motor skills or that muscle memory of how to become, resourceful. I gave an example of how I went out and I did the whole undercover billionaire thing, and I tried to, do certain things. I even signed up for some BNI thing, networking events. Nobody even showed up to the event, not the in-person one, not even the one on Zoom. So I'm going to probably reach out to BNI and their headquarters and find out what in the world's going on with their organization, especially if they're charging people for networking. Essentially, what I'm doing right now with you and talking on this camera is exactly what people are getting charged for. So I think that's interesting. I think that it's more so about access than anything else, but I used to be a part of it before. Not that much access to many things. So I'm going to go ahead and improve on that later on. But so resourceful, develop resourcefulness. How do you do that? Go out and try to survive for a week, 2 weeks, a month, so on and so forth, and do what the undercover billionaire TV show did. Mind you, you're going to be lacking the psychological understanding that there's not a big camera crew which can work in your favor that you can leverage to benefit you when it comes to orchestrating everything you need to do in order and to get into people's good graces. Because if you're going up there without that, without those parameters and without everything else that they had, because, well, let's face it, it was television, it's one of those things where there's going to be a disconnect and you're not going to know why. Now, moving forward, it does take two. You do need a product, you do need a service, but then you need to understand how to market it, the way to say it, so on and so forth, to get into people's good graces, to plant the seed, as they say. And then when people walk up to you or walk up to people that are selling your stuff, what are they going to say in order to ease the process along? In other words, what are they going to say when the speed bumps come, i.e. the objections, when people, say, oh, well, I'm scared. Why should I pay this much? Where's the value? Because they don't see the value. That's probably marketing's fault, because marketing should have depicted the value in the marketing itself. So things like that. And then last but not least, you have to be able to see and be more aware of everything that something could be instead of just what is. And that's where I reference class, creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality, a way of thinking better, right? And I mentioned the infinity symbol, so on and so forth. Yes, it just looks like the infinity symbol, but depending on how you perceive and your perception of it, so on and so forth, it can be so many other things. It could be two teardrops tied together, so on and so forth, or touching, or two balloons tied together, touching. Or if you fold it, put it back in half, it makes the shape of a heart. If you separate them, put them upside down, it looks like teardrops. If you spin it, so on and so forth, while it's still attached, it looks like a torus from sacred geometry, and the list goes on and on. But without that understanding, without that knowledge and education, well, it's going to be difficult in order to come to a conclusion and to get the best results possible. So I hope this video helped you guys. And if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen class, I get into a lot of things there to open up people's eyes, minds, to make an impact, not only in the individual watching it, but those that they go out and affect later on. Because at the end of the day, you don't get any fun out of pushing one domino over and then that domino pushing the other domino back. No, where the magic happens is where you push one domino over, and as the dominoes begin to fall, it forms a great how do I say this? Piece of artwork, right? It's this tapestry that comes to life once all the pieces fall. I don't know if you guys ever seen the artwork shows where somebody will go ahead and you see a bunch of dominoes or whatever, and once they fall, the shade or the color of the domino and everything else and all the other dominoes will go ahead and create this whole thing. Or if you've seen the TV show Elementary, in the beginning, they take a ball and it starts going down this thing, or Casper the Friendly Ghost, whatever the case may be. But as it's going through this whole maze, it's showing you so much and doing everything. And then at the end, you can see the end result and you get a wow, or like a magic trick, you get the I want to do it again, or I want to see it again. Similar to the iPhone, right? You get the iPhone, I want the Mac, I want the tablet, I want the whole ecosystem, so on and so forth. Why is it that you think that? How did they get that idea there? And if you're still curious at this point, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.